Alright, so now that you're done with the first part of this course, which was about HTML, let's move on to the second part of the course, which will tackle the topic of CSS. Alright, so the latest version of CSS is almost similar to the previous ones, except for some properties and functionalities. So, the only difference is that whenever a new version is updated, some properties and functionalities are added. Alright, so let's now talk about how CSS can be used to design websites. So first things first, what is CSS3? CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and we can guess by its name that it's used to define the style of a website. It displays HTML elements or documents on a screen, paper, or through other media. It saves our time and helps us control the layout of multiple web pages at once. Moreover, there are many file formats in CSS, but we mostly use external style sheets in which we can store our CSS files. Alright, so that's how basically it works. CSS is for the design. As I said previously, HTML is the bones, and CSS is to give your website like the final touches, this beauty that one feels when scrolling through the website. Alright, and now on to the next lecture. Okay, so let's now talk about the syntax of CSS. It consists of a selector, properties, and their corresponding values. So for example, we have H1, we open the curly brackets, color, colon, blue, semicolon, font size, colon, 20 pixels, semicolon, and we close the brackets. So the HTML element here is H1, and that is the selector. Then we will add two properties, as you can see in front of you. So the properties that we're talking about in this case are color and font size. So that's how we do it. We will assign a value to each property. Let's say the color is blue and the font size is 20 pixels. All the properties that we use are known as declarations, which are separated by a semicolon. And yeah, so that's how it basically works. And now on to the next lecture. Alright, so I'm now in my VS Code, and as you can see in front of you, I've created a sample website for a hospital. So you can see that it's written in HTML code and that no CSS file is included whatsoever. In fact, I've created the CSS file externally because whenever we are working on a large project, we have to create an external file. It's better to separate your CSS if you're working on a big project. Like this, you have like the distinction, and you can see your HTML on one side, your CSS on the other side, and if you need to give, to make like some necessary changes, then you have all your CSS in one single file. So yeah, basically it makes things more structured and organized. That's why we do it. Okay, so let me click on this tab, and here you go. This is my CSS file. You can see that I've written all the properties here, as well as some selectors of CSS. So the goal of this lecture is to show you the difference between CSS and HTML. Alright, so let's now copy the path of this file and paste the link into the browser. This is what the website looks like. I've used HTML, CSS, and Bootstrap in this case. If you don't know about Bootstrap, do not worry. You will learn about it in the future on your web development journey if you decide to dive in deeper into all of the web development frameworks and coding that you can do. So yeah, you will learn about it later, if you're interested. But yeah, don't worry about it. Just keep in mind for now that it's simply a free and open source CSS framework. directed at responsive front-end web development. So if you wanna quickly build a page, you can use Bootstrap for front end. It really helps you to build things and set them up very quickly. All right, so now let me remove the CSS and Bootstrap files and see how the website looks like. Okay, so in VS Code, I'll press Ctrl+A to select everything, and then I delete everything inside this CSS file. I save it. I'll also remove all the CTN links, so we'll talk about them later. Let's go back to our browser and check how the website looks like with just the HTML code. So I'll refresh the page with F5, and here you go. Our website is now a complete mess. Actually, it's not that much of a mess. It's just that the design is awful. It's like the design was altered actually. Like the layout of the website has been completely changed because, we're just using the HTML. Okay, so yeah, that's what you see in front of you, a totally messed up website. It's actually the same content as before, but without a proper design. And that's exactly why we need to use CSS alongside HTML. It's exactly why we need CSS. Because a website or a page with just HTML is terribly ugly. It's not professional. I mean, it looks like a website from the 90s, and yeah, we need CSS to make it more professional, to make it good looking, and yeah, to design it very well. All right, so I hope you now understand the main purpose of CSS. And that being said, let's now move on to the next lecture and talk about the different types of CSS. All right, and now on to the next one. Okay, so let's now explore the different types of CSS. There are basically three types of CSS. The first one is the external CSS, the second one is the internal CSS, and the third one is the inline CSS. So we mostly use external CSS, which is similar to internal CSS. Now, when it comes to inline CSS, it uses the style attribute and saves our time by directly adding the style in the HTML tag instead of using a selector. So let's go to VS Code and see how all of this works practically. Alright, so here I am in VS Code. I'll first open the CSS folder, which I created before. And now we will create an index file with the name of index.html. Firstly, I'll create a document with inline CSS. I'll use the title tag to write the title, Introduction to CSS. And then I'll use an h1 tag and I'll write hello world. I'll save it and I check the result in the browser. Here you go. We have our output. Okay, so now I'll use some properties to style the text. I'll write the text color as aqua and the background color as green. So I go back to my browser, I refresh the page, and here you go, you can see the result. So the difference between HTML and CSS is that in HTML we have to use various attributes, but in CSS we only have to write the style and the properties. As I said before, inline CSS is used when we want to work quickly. When we want the work to be done quickly, we use inline CSS. If you're just testing things and want to check out how it works in a very fast manner, then you use inline CSS. Alright, so let's now talk about internal CSS. To do internal CSS, I'll first need to add the style tags here in the head tag. Okay, then I add an h2 tag here in the body. I'll write some text in it. Let's say hello world for h2. I save it. Then I'll use the h2 selector. I assign the text color and the background color to it. I choose green, yellow for the text color and honey dew for the background color, so I'll save it now. And in VS Code, you can see that if you put your mouse over there, you can select any color shade you want. So we'll also talk about RGB in the next lesson. Alright, so for now, I go to my browser, I refresh the page, and here you go. We can see the result right in front of us. Okay, so we saw inline CSS and internal CSS. Let's now move on and talk about external CSS. So as discussed before, external CSS is used for larger projects, like a website. Like if we have a website of 2 to 3 pages, then of course it's much better and much more convenient, and it's more ergonomic. It's more from a management perspective, it's much more convenient to use the external CSS. All right, so developers, they mostly use external CSS because it's much easier for them to manage it if it was an external CSS rather than other types of CSS. All right, so let's now create a separate file, as we cannot use so many properties in inline or internal CSS, and the process is very lengthy, so that's why we'll create a separate file now. We'll create a file with the name of style.css. You can see that both files are separate and they have different icons. Okay, so now I'm in my HTML file. Let me add an h3 file here and write some text in it. So let's say, hey, how are you? And then I save it. So now I go to the CSS file. I use the h3 selector in the CSS file. Okay, so let me quickly explain the main purpose of a selector. So as we're designing HTML content with CSS, we have to choose the tag that we're selecting. You can see here that I've selected the h3 element in this external CSS sheet. Okay, so now I'll assign the color as green and the background color as yellow. I'll save it and we check the results in front of us. As you can see, the CSS file haven't run successfully. Our output is just showing the HTML output. There is no design whatsoever, so no design at all applied to this output, which is not good. So let's see, why is this happening? Okay, so it's simply because I haven't connected my HTML file to CSS external style sheet. And as a consequence, the browser cannot understand the instructions. And that's why it happened. So it simply didn't apply the CSS properties on my HTML content. Another thing that you need to keep in mind, so you need to remember that our CSS and HTML files are not in separate folders. So the problem doesn't stem from folder organization. All right, so let me show you how we can solve this issue and link our HTML and CSS files. So all you need to do is use a link tag to link both files. Here, I need to specify which CSS file I'm referring to. I'll write style.css as a source. I save it, and here you go. Problem solved. As you can see, our CSS file is now working, which is perfect. All right, so in summary, whenever you're dealing with an external CSS sheet, just remember to link the HTML and CSS files. All right, folks, so we covered many important concepts in this lecture. I hope it's all crystal clear to you now. And now on to the next lecture. Alright, so what are CSS selectors? CSS selectors are used to select HTML elements. For example, if I want to select the h1 tag, I can use CSS selectors. So CSS selectors are usually divided into 5 categories. The first category is the simple selector. It's used to select the tags. Based on the type of element, like class or ID. With simple selectors, we can, for example, select tags like h1, h2, paragraph tag, the div tag, and so on. Next, we have the combinator selectors. So they have unique names and they select elements based on the relationship between them. Next, we have the pseudo class selectors. So they are advanced selectors and select elements based on a certain state. So we'll discuss them later in the lesson. Number 4, we have pseudo elements selectors. So they select and style a part of an element. Number 5, attribute selectors. So that's the 5th one. Attribute selectors. They select elements based on an attribute or its value. So we'll talk about all these selectors later in the course. Do not worry about it for now. Alright, let's now talk about CSS colors. So I previously showed you how you can give a color to any text. These colors are classified as RGB, hex, HSL, and RGBA. So we mostly use RGB and RGBA and hex. HSL is not common because most people do not have any knowledge about it. So I'll also use for now just the RGB, RGBA, and hex. Okay, so let's have a practical look at all of this in our VS Code. Okay, so we created an internal and external CSS file in the previous lesson. I'll delete this and save it. I'll keep the external style sheet because we might need it later. So, alright, now I'll use the P tag. I write lorem in it. And here you go, we have our sample paragraph. Then I'll use the style tag, which is mostly used in inline CSS. I'll write P and then I create my curly brackets. Now I'll use the color property and write hot pink. I'll copy the file and paste it into the browser. Now take a look at the results. Our text is indeed in pink color, which is perfect. And yeah, that's what we expected basically. Okay, so let's go back to VS Code. I'll write a P tag again and write lorem in it. I'll save it and check the result in the browser. And as you can see, the result is the same. So now I'll write P times 100. This means that I'm writing the paragraph tag 100 times. I'll write some text in it and show you the results. So here you go. As you can see, the result is the same as previously because I used the simple selector. So whenever we use the simple selector, it will be applied on all P tags. So basically, if I use if I use 100 P tags on my website, the same color will be applied to all of the tags. Now, if you want to have different texts and background colors for each tag, we will use ID and class to do it. Okay, so let me use the class element here, write para1 in it and save it. Please make sure to write all the coding within the style tags. Okay, so I'll add some space here and put a dot to specify the class. Now I write the class name para1. Then I open my curly brackets here. Alright, so I'll use the color property and choose indigo. Okay, so now you'll notice that the color of the first paragraph has changed to indigo and that the rest of the paragraphs are still not they are still in hot pink color. So the other ones are still in hot pink color. And the one I specified is in indigo. Okay, so the first paragraph now has an indigo color, while all the others stayed like before, like previously. They remained the same, basically. Okay, so now I use the ID element. I write para2 in it and I save it. Also, I need to write hashtag para2 here and I choose the khaki color. I'll save it and you can see that the color is now different. Alright, so now focus on what I'm saying. Whenever we use a simple selector with an element tag, it will be applied on all paragraphs. However, if we use the class tag, the property will just be applied on elements of a certain class. So that's a very crucial component that you need to keep in mind. I'll repeat. So whenever we use a simple selector with an element tag, it will be applied on all paragraphs. However, if we use the class tag, the property will just be applied on elements of a certain class. Alright, now, when it comes to the paragraph with the ID tag, it has nearly the same property as a class. So you may wonder, like, what's the difference? What's the difference between ID and class? The only difference is that the ID is unique in a page and can only apply to at most one element. At most one element. One single element. While the class, like in a classroom, we have many students. And here we have the same meaning. We're talking about a class. So, which means like we have many elements. Alright, so we said the ID is unique in a page and can only apply to at most one element, while the class selector can apply to multiple elements. Alright, now I'll add here the background color, which is lime green, and you can see the results. So let me tell you one thing about these white spaces that are appearing here. So to remove them, we'll use a star selector, also called a universal selector, and this will affect the entire page. Okay, so I'll give a value of 0 here to the margin and padding. We will discuss these terms in the upcoming lectures, don't worry for now. Okay, so I saved the file, and as you can see, the spaces have been removed. Alright, so the remaining selectors will be discussed later. The selectors that we talked about in this lecture were the most common ones. So I wanted to discuss them first. Alright, that's pretty much it for this lecture, and now on to the next one.